John said. So I'm going to let our esteemed moderator, Lauren Costella, introduce her panel tonight, but we're here to talk about professional services and where it fits. So, yes. Lauren, you're on.
Thank you, Irene. This is pretty exciting. This got a lot of interest. So I don't know about you, like how many people are actually excited in this room? I hope so, because you're all here. So my name is Lauren Costella. I am super thrilled. This is the first panel that I get to actually moderate. So yay for me. No, so it should be a great time. We have some amazing people here. For a little bit of background about myself, I'm Vice President of Customer Success at a company called Medrio. We are a clinical trial software company, and we focus on small trials, and we are the world's best at it. So I'm happy to tell you more about it, but I would actually rather tell you a little bit about our panelists. So we have some amazing folks. So I'm going to let them give the background about themselves. But we have Andrew Marks here. He's the COO and founder of SuccessHacker. We have Rula Kallas. She is VP of Customer Success at Celigo. Sorry.
That's okay.
And then we have Omid.
Razavi.
There we go. Thank you. And he is head of product success at ServiceNow, which is super cool. So I'll let you guys give a little bit of background, and then we'll ask some questions to the audience to kick things off. So why don't we start with Omid here, because you're just right next to me.
Okay, great. I'm Omid Razavi. I'm with ServiceNow, a $2.3 billion software company. And I run product success. I'm actually in the product group. Before joining ServiceNow, I worked at a number of companies, including SAP SuccessHackers, the capacity of customer success. And before then, I was in professional services for about more than a decade. So probably that qualifies me why I'm here, because of the background. So I can tell you about how professional services was 10 or 20 years ago at enterprise software companies, and maybe contrast with what it is today. So I'm delighted to be on this panel, and thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Rula, and I work at Celigo. We're an integration platform as a service. Our focus and the value that we bring to our customers is really being a business user-centric integration platform that makes it easy for business users or department heads to create integrations instead of relying on IT. I've been with the company for almost 10 years, and I started as a one-person services organization, and then since then I've grown it to be about 60 people across CSMs, support, and implementation.
I'm Andrew Marks. I'm as Lauren mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of SuccessHacker. We are a services organization that helps companies figure out customer success. We have consulting, recruiting, training, and coaching service offerings. I've spent the last 25 years in tech. Last 20 years building and running success and services organizations, professional services teams, client services, customer success, both on-prem and in the cloud. And as Omid mentioned, I've seen that transition from services in the on-prem world to services in the cloud world. And as both of these two fine individuals know, and I've known both of them for at least a decade, I've got an opinion about everything.
Well, now that you guys know a little bit about our panelists, I think it's really important to understand a little bit about all of you. So first and foremost, are you a CS executive? If you're a CS executive, raise your hand. Okay, so we've got a couple CS executives here. What about people who are team leads or directors of CS in their space? Anyone? Awesome. What about individual contributors? Are you a CSM? Are you part of a CS team? Fantastic. What about people in professional services? Is there anyone specifically in professional services? Great, we have a couple over here. Are there people who are in the consulting world? Maybe not in the Great, we've got a good chunk of people here. That's awesome. Let's talk about size of company. So we'll do it in the range of employees. How many people are part of a company that are early stage, 50 people or less? Couple, all right. What about 51 to 200? I'm actually in that group too.
5.
Yeah, 5, 6. So 200 to 500? All right, fantastic. And then over 500? Fantastic. So we got a pretty good mix of people.
400 to 200.
Yeah? No, that's awesome. So so we have a really good mix of people in the room today, which is phenomenal. That'll, I think, make the conversation pretty robust. So we'll talk here on the panel for a little bit, but I do want to leave room for you to ask questions as well, because the point here is to be interactive and for us to all learn from each other. So, without further ado, I think we should get started. Let me just make sure, you guys can hear us. I'm assuming that you can hear us, there's no problems there, because I think our microphone isn't working up here, so just project loudly.
You can do that.
Excellent, excellent. So let's start with our first theme, everybody. So we talked a little bit in advance here about really what you're all here for. Where should PS sit, right? In sales, customer success, and really how it's grown. So I would like to ask the first question, and I'd like to hear from everybody on this one. So we'll go kind of one at a time, but where should PS fall? Does PS, professional services, belong in sales, or does it belong in customer success, and why? Who would like to take a stab?
I can go. So my strong opinion is that PS should live within the CS organization. And the reason why I think that is because ultimately our focus is on making the customer successful. And implementations are just a component of that. They're a very critical component. And ultimately, in order to make a customer successful in the SaaS space, when we are trying to renew them year over year, our products are released maybe bi-monthly even, we need implementation folks to be able to be part of that ongoing adoption initiative, and having it all under one department head, in my opinion, makes it easy to get that synergy. You don't have to fight with someone else for resources, and you can really focus your resources on what's necessary to win the renewal.
I would agree.
You really just asked me to answer the question.
I want to say that yes, but it also depends. If you're starting with professional services, and in the modern world, the professional services role is to take customer live, get in production as quickly as possible. This wasn't the charter for professional services a decade ago, or in the old model, because at that time, really time to value was not a big concern for the vendor. And as a result, the professional services became so big as they did, because they also were a big revenue generator for the company. So they became another pillar of income for the company, which was very important. Now, as you stand up for professional services, and actually I want to find out, for those of you who are in the enterprise software business, how many of you actually do not have professional services in your company? 1, 2, 5, 6. Okay. So the death of professional services may or may not be exaggerated yet, but there are a few that are there. But the modern world is like that. So as Rula mentioned, if really your goal is to take customer live and have decent margin, or even maybe not lose money, it makes sense for professional services to report to the same executive chief officer who is responsible for other services. But as soon as you have a revenue target for your professional services, then it becomes an important part of your income portfolio. And under that scenario, it's conceivable to think that actually head of professional services will reporting to the chief revenue officer, who actually then runs also sales and other functions.
But is that realistic now? I mean, with the subscription economy, you have companies that their valuation as a company to the market and to their investors is based not on the services revenue that's brought in. It's based on what their ARR is, what their customer lifetime value is. That services revenue it could be a one-time thing. So what they end up doing is they end up burying that services revenue into their annual revenue, subscription revenue, right? So is that even going to be a thing anymore? As so many companies are moving to the cloud, and so many customers are moving to the cloud.
I think that's an interesting question. It kind of gets at a theme that we did discuss a little bit in advance here, which is how has professional services evolved, especially with the subscription economy? What was services like before, and how has that changed now? And do we really think it's on its way out? Like, have people switched over? Is there anyone in the room, actually this is a good question, has anyone in the room been in professional services and then moved into customer success? Okay, so there's a few people where that's actually happened actively. So I'm curious to know from the panel, what's been your experience historically with services? How has it changed with the subscription economy?
So my early work was with the CRM package called Scopus, and you guys remember that. And Scopus, yeah.
You're old like
this
me,
was like the beginning of. This is when CRM was coined. That's how long I've been in it. And we literally built the customer, the SFA and the CRM products using a tool that we built with the Scopus toolkit, because we had to have something to sell. That's what our investors said. And so, it was a huge professional services effort. These days, though, you've moved from that, where you're building everything and you're integrating everything, to configuration, right? I mean, there's only when you have a single code line, when you have a true SaaS application, there's only so much that you can do with it, or there's only so much you should do with it. And so I think that services, that professional services role, it definitely is diminished, except when you have some sort of platform, right? So some sort of integration platform, business intelligence platform. Remember what it was like at Savion, right? We had to build everything, but it was a platform, right? So it's another it depends answer, right? If you've got a platform, even a platform in the cloud. I was at Burst Cloud BI. People thought, oh, it's cloud, it's easy, it's great. No, it's still data warehouse design and and integration, and there's still definitely work to do, but it's not as heavy lifting as previous.
That's great. Rula, what about you? I know that you started as a one-woman show here, so.
Yes, and prior to my early days, I was a consultant. I started at Ernst & Young, so I lived that whole consultant lifestyle, and then started transitioning into software companies, and I've stayed in that for the past 18 years. And so from my perspective, the transition that I've seen, I think for a services individual, is actually a positive thing for them as an employee. Being able to work in a SaaS environment, being able to engage with customers and not having to go on site all the time gives people a much better quality of life. And then what I've found also in a lot of services people, because they're relationship focused and they like working with customers, sometimes if their only job is to get a customer live in a month or 2 months or 3 months, and then they never talk to that customer again or understand how they're doing, then they lose a little bit, right? They want to be able to see that customers are successful on and on. And I think having them with the ability to engage from an adoption perspective also gives that added bonus to their world.
That was good comments. I just want to add, I agree with both in that professional services was there to address complexity. Software was very complex, it took so long, and actually we didn't care how long it took to get implemented, because time to value was perpetual license. They had it, the customer had it for life. Now times are shrinking, time to value becomes important, as Rula mentioned. So the line of sight may not even be just to the go live, but actually customer realizing value a few months or a year after they go live. a couple of other trends that we see with professional services. At the time, I remember back then, we were a pillar of income for the company, and in a way we were competing, sometimes collaborating, get offerings that collaborated with the partners, but at the same time we were competing a lot of times for the business that also the third-party providers. Now today, as you scale, even sometimes professional services asked to think about how they can actually help with the creation of the ecosystem of knowledge and expertise for the implementation. Because now our focus is not primarily revenue, but it's hitting customers live, making sure that no customer is left behind, if you will, in their journeys to go live. So then a lot of times I've seen that actually professional services that are not 100% working on the customer projects, but they spend a day or two creating best practices, articles, communities, mentoring. You see offers that are very hybrid. The professional services are embedded in the customer projects, or vice versa, because at the same time you have a fiduciary duty towards a larger customer base, not only the ones that are paying for your services. So that's another trend that probably has changed from a decade ago.
Sure, so what I'm hearing, I hear a lot of theme around the implementation piece. I heard a little bit about the education. I personally, at Medrio, I have professional services, and we do have a bookings goal, but that bookings target and really who's held responsible is sales. So it's kind of interesting because I'd almost say that it's a little bit of a hybrid in the sense that when it comes to, well, first of all, as an executive, I care about the bookings number, and I'm incentivized on the bookings number. But my individual team members, they have a team goal around bookings, but it's not the majority of their bonus, but they are incentivized on making sure that those projects are delivered. And part of the delivery comes from implementation, part of it comes from different projects that customers need, and even with a SaaS-based cloud model, some of our customers, we have focus customers, that's what we call them, focus ones that everything works perfectly. And then there's customers where it's a little bit outside what our development team is going to do, but actually with a technical resource, we could offer and work with that customer in a very successful way. So we actually kind of have a model where PS sits under professional services, but really the bookings target sits with sales because we have all of our revenue and bookings under sales. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know if people have seen that, whether it's right or wrong. It seems to be working with us, so I'm not going to change it right now.
We have the same type of model, and as Omid was speaking, one of the things that came to mind was one of the things that I think hasn't changed around PS is margin, right? I mean, even though I work for a SaaS company and our focus is all about renewals and ARR, I still am held to a margin. You know, we might not be a profit center like a PS organization was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but we're not a loss center.
Yeah.
We're expected to be able to pay for ourselves.
You want to be able to break even,
Yeah.
take into account all the free work that you need to do,
Correct.
and I mean that's how I did all my financial models. Was it's X. This is the margin target, assuming that that's going to all get eaten up by some free work and some goodwill
And the retention.
and the retention, exactly.
That's interesting. And not everyone has the ability to just cover their costs. Some investors do require more. In fact, our investors were pushing for more, but I think it also depends on perhaps the type of company that you are and the offering that you have to be able to make the case that, yeah, I should be producing 25% of the revenue for the company. In some cases, that actually lowers your valuation, I think. But
It does.
Yeah.
When you are, so when I was at Savion, I actually followed Omid into Savion 10 years ago. That first year that year I was only a year. That year I was there.
Cleaning after me. Cleaning up after me.
Services revenue made up half of our revenue for the entire year.
wow.
And I was very concerned about that because that can have a real hit on your valuation as a company. And so we tried to do some things to adjust that and to sell some of our services as licensed.
I want to comment on what Lauren said, and then maybe a question
Yeah.
answer. Lauren mentioned that actually they have a professional service organization, but the selling is done by the sales team, product sales. And that is actually, I think, is a healthy structure. In that actually, if your professional service offering becomes so complicated that you have to actually have services sales people, because the product guys who are used to, selling, maybe they don't want complexity. You have to have an overlay that would add to your cost. But if you can actually make it easy for the customers to consume your services and understand that when they buy this product, also these services are going to be attached to it in a meaningful way. They understand the value, and sales get comped on it. I think you have a structure that you can actually build a nice backlog orders and just focus on delivery, which a lot of times professional services like to do, instead of working on SOWs and changing it. And if every time you ask for a SOW, you're creating friction with the customer, which is not something that, if you can avoid it and be streamlined, then that's better. So cookie cutter.
They have to be comped on revenue and margin, right? Because if they're selling shitty deals to get it over the line, you lose money on the delivery time after. You gotta have the right compensation. So it works in sales with a caveat.
Absolutely. I know you had a question.
Yeah, I'm Donna Weber, hi.
Yeah.
And so a question something I've been pondering lately. So my take is, so we've been more on this, services needs to be 15% or lower, or increases, or it impacts the valuation of a company. And I see that in a sense, SaaS is becoming we're going to become more and more services, not just professional services, but customer success services, support services, education services. And in order to really engage customers and have that relationship. And I would see down the road we're even charging more for services, premium offerings. And so I'm wondering if that model's going to change. Are we going to be, is it going to be software might be 50% and the services is 50%? I'm curious. That's something I see. Is it going to be a trend? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think it's a great question. A paper by McKinsey came out back in January, I do believe, and it talked about a sustainable funding model for customer success specifically as being one of the pillars. So I am actually curious what our panel thinks about that. And how do you think about services collectively, if now it includes customer success managers, support, PS, however that evolves?
Education.
Education.
That's my background.
That's a huge one.
Remember education.
I think if the analysts, the VCs, if the people out there that are valuing the company value the value of services and the services revenue that come in, then yeah, you can move to that. But out the market, they look at ARR. That's what they're looking at to value the company. So whether or not it's real revenue that's coming in, and it's always going to be coming in at much lower margin than your license revenue, of course. It's how the company is valued in the end, because we're not doing this for shits and giggles in our health. We're doing this to make something, to make something out of these companies that we work for, to get the right valuation for that company, for the liquidity event, or for whatever, to drive the stock price up so we all win. I mean, it's just the truth of the matter, you know? And I gotta tell you, my opinion of that has evolved over time, because at first I was like, it's revenue, right? It's money coming in. But it's more than that.
I think one way to maybe think about it is the answer to this question changes based on where you are in the life cycle of the company. We all know that very early phase startups lose money on deals for the right reason.
Yep.
The product is not ready, the market is not ready, we are investing and your investors are perfectly okay with it. And at some point as you grow, like we are a Series C company and recent holdings in the investor team, and their margin orders for us is every dollar that you can get from a customer into PS, now back into that customer in service, that will drive your growth of ARR. So the margin order is, if you can get gross margin equals 0,
Yep.
you pay for yourself, because we don't have the funds to pay for more, like we're at that point in the curve. Invest. I think when you get a bit larger, you start to think about, wait, our product is more mature, customers are more willing to pay, we should charge probably a little bit more, and now you start to think about how much margin do you want to have. The answer changes based on where you are.
And I would also add that you can monetize services in different ways, right? So we've monetized customer success plans as a subscription. So it's ARR. An investor would value it less than the product ARR, but it's certainly valued higher than just a one-time PS revenue. And so we can build in services and utilize our implementation resources to deliver some of that, and it still accomplishes multiple goals, right? We're getting revenue in, we're paying for our people, but we have the potential for a customer to pay over the lifetime for the education or for some knowledge about the release that just came out, and the release that's coming out in another few months, right? Because we're, I think, primarily talking about SaaS, right? And that's just the nature of the game there.
See, that's the key. The services revenue is a one-time thing, right? How do we get that though into this recurring, right? I'm a lot better off if I'm doing everything I can to make the customer successful, get value out of the platform, and keep them as long as possible. That is a nice long stream of revenue that I keep getting out of that customer. I'm a lot better off getting that revenue as long as possible than having that one-time hit.
So what I'm hearing, and I think I'm going to agree before I ask the question, is that services revenue that's subscription-based is good money. Because that is something that would be recurring, and you sell it once. The problem with the one time is that, and probably Wall Street and VCs also they see that as a product vendor, you write a statement of work for a work that may take 3 or 4 times the effort. You do not know. You cannot disengage like independent consulting company would. So, and that's a lot of times resulted in losses. So if you can actually structure your professional services offerings in a way that actually would be a recurring structure and be sold together with the product, so you don't need to have extra sellers, then actually you bring in your costs down and you're actually adding to the company's subscription top line revenue, which is something your CEO would welcome.
Does anyone do that today? Have services kind of built in as a separate cost, but is included, or is it just one price for everybody?
I do both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're on the Waterstone, we work with clients to actually just do that. And so recently, I think there's a couple of companies, Informatica launched their customer success services, which bundles in a number of support, education, customer success activities, as well as some advisory services in there, like so health checks and things of that sort. Because I think the conversation we're just having now, and to the extent that these are standalone SOW-based services, the valuation multiple for those things are smaller, but they're baked in as a tier of premium subscriptions, and at some point it's all ARR. And now where the margin, overall margin is not good. You're not looking at margin of my premium component of my ARR versus my base component of the ARR. So it starts to get bundled in. I think a number of companies are looking at that incremental revenue as a mechanism to fund things like customer success and other activities. Otherwise it becomes very expensive, which is really hard, right? So and you're increasingly seeing that. The other thing I think that most mentioned yet is interesting. We track companies and their services margin over life cycle and their tenure. And so you look at SaaS companies over like the life cycle of 8 years, and invariably the first few years of their existence is like -20, -25, -30%. And within 5 years or so, their margins start to break even on the services side. And this is pure professional services, right? So they're looking to at least drive it break even, and then maybe try to get 2 to 3 points of gross margin, or actually gross margin on their services. Because over time, as soon as there's a revenue challenge, otherwise the budgets get cut and you lose resources. And so I think we need to get there. But early on, people have money to fund those services. I think the way forward, and there's a point, is can you make them into premium subscriptions and start to actually deliver success to actually get so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Irene, I know you have a question.
I have a question, yes. So I think, what I'm hearing is the business models have changed over time, right? So the reason that, as Omid said, one-time services revenue is bad services revenue, but subscription services revenue is good services revenue. And it's really the same revenue. It's just a different way of modeling it in your financial models. And I think as the models change over time, I'm curious about what the future implications are for especially those companies that are now in a subscription model that might have products that aren't as simple to use and do require integration and have complexity, because I am yet to find all the really complicated business. I mean, I work in cybersecurity right now, and we definitely have an extremely complex business environment. So what we've chosen to do is work through partners, channels and system integrators, both managed service partners and system integrators. And I'm wondering what the panel thinks about how that's going to play out in the future.
Absolutely. I think we talked a little bit about partners in our in prepping, and we were talking a little bit about how do you use partners and what is professional services role, or should it be a partner? Should it be someone like another kind of consulting agency
System
to work with?
integrator,
System integrator. In the clinical trial space, for example, we have partners who do builds. We personally do not take on the liability of building someone's study or building their database where they're going to collect that PHII and they're going to collect all of that. So we rely on clinical research organizations to actually execute on that, and we basically take the business. They want to use our software, but someone has to build for them. We pass that through. I'm curious, is that also something that companies should consider? Are there really complex organizations that need to rely on partners more so than bringing things in-house?
I'm a huge fan of partners, but I spent nearly 10 years in the BI business, and that is complicated. You know, building data warehouses and integration work, but you just don't flip. You don't flip on the partner switch. You have to do it the right way, right? And that involves making sure that the partners are, especially in the subscription economy, the partners are trained well, they're certified, and you have some oversight and some idea of the quality of the work that they're doing. Because at the end of the day, if they do a shitty job and that customer opens their browser and it takes them 30 seconds to see the report, your logo's at the top, right? It doesn't matter that the partner screwed it up and they weren't certified, they weren't trained well. It's your logo. It's your company that's
Your churn risk.
that's exactly, it's your churn risk. They get paid, right? So I mean, it's services in the moment, and that, but they've essentially greased the skids for a churn for you. So and I lived that at first. Okay, I lived that, and
I know you did.
Yeah, and where we did not do a good job out of the gate certifying our partners, and it was a nightmare.
Has anyone had, Rula or Omid, have you guys done or worked with partners, and how did you handle like those challenges of certifying your partners or educating them? How did that work?
Yeah, I mean, education and certification, which come together, it's critical. Partners, why do partners want to deploy your product? Because probably they see that the market that's growing, they can invest in your technology, get their people trained. And then they want to make sure that they're also, they're recognized for the work that they do, so that you refer to them business, and hopefully down the road they actually then refer their clients to you. So there's also this symbiotic selling relationship occurs between you and your organization and selling organization and partners. So keeping partners, honest, keeping them qualified, making sure that they're putting qualified, trained resources on the projects, and are very important. Some of the techniques that you can use is that, and sometimes actually the pull comes from the customer, is that customers, they realize that you have a small cadre of professional services, and they say, we want your people to be on the project. And they also realize the partner is up and coming. So the kind of the blending model that you could do is that you bring in a senior person on the customer project together with the partner organization, articulate to the customer that the partner is there for some bigger mission, bigger end-to-end initiative that's probably supporting the customer's strategic initiative, and change management, ongoing support, a lot of other things that partners do as part of a system integration effort. But you provide eyes and ears to that projects, and then you keep track of the resources on the partner side so that they get to the next level of certification. for example, how many, their architects or consultants, how many implementations they did. And even sometimes they take that accreditation with them to the next company that they join. Because as they move from one company to another, you want to keep track of them. So it's, the partners are important, and also the people on the projects are important, and it's your responsibility, as Andrew mentioned, is that to keep tabs on them and keep them honest, or sometimes fire them. The company that does the firing of the partner really well, and I admire them for that, is Workday. If a partner is put even in one resource that's not certified on the projects, they come in and really give a hard time to the partner. So that's something to look at.
That's interesting. Rula, do you guys work with partners at all? And
We
how
do. We're in the
manage-
early stages of our channel program, and right now we're just focused on a smaller set of channel partners and doing just basic education and basically shadowing. I mean, we have a services person, one of my former managers, who's spending the time and working side by side with the partners on projects, and that's, you know, at this point we kind of have to brute force it until we have more people that can do this work. And what we do, integrations are very complex. Even the simplest of integrations is incredibly complex. So I think that the partner ecosystem is important regardless of whether you have a complex or simple product, because if we go back to the valuation of our companies, and it's all about not only ARR, but your ability to scale it quickly. And if you have a heavy services burden within your own organization, it's very difficult to scale and to keep up with the ARR growth that everyone's looking for.
So I think I would like to point out, that's a very, very important distinction you point out, which is the go-to-market strategy as well as the go-to-market for your specific product is very, very important in terms of how you focus. So I was part of a company that was all direct to enterprise before we got acquired by a company that was all through the partner. And so a partner-led model is a very, very different go-to-market strategy, a very, very different organization, a very, very different way of selling and delivering. So even though it may be a SaaS product, the organization that you have to build in that would go and enable the partners, that would go and educate the partners, is not just through people, it's also software that's needed. The integration platforms that you have to build to make sure that they have the right level of focus, the right level of enablement. How do they support? How do they do tier 1 to tier 4? That becomes super, super critical. And so the way in which you succeed when you're growing your business really depends upon the partners now, because basically what you're doing is you're making the software available so that the partners can go and sell. So it's sell with, sell through is truly dependent upon a very, very critical partner success organization in addition to a customer success organization. So our team was doing implementations, success, as well as the delivery for the partners. Still, they were at a point that they were able to hire the right skill sets and build a ecosystem for our product. Now, obviously, as a part of the growth, you got to make sure that software is funded, software integration platforms are funded, so that you're not putting people to solve the problem. So I think that's a very, very important point.
It's a fascinating theme. I don't know if you had a comment on that, Andrew, because you're just about to speak, so continue to interrupt.
I was just going to mention one mistake that I've seen in enabling the partners also is not charging them for the education and certification. They you might not charge them the same as your customers, but they got to put skin in the game, or they're not going to take what you're teaching them, what you're certifying them seriously.
Which is interesting. So a common thing that I've heard, especially within this professional services conversation, which I find fascinating, and it did come up, is this whole education piece. Who owns the education piece? Does it sit with professional services? How does that work? I'm curious about, does your professional services team, does your customer success team, do you develop that? Is this a separate group? How does that work? And monetizing it, like some of that, especially certification, is something that you would want to make sure that people take seriously. So
I can take a first stab at it. Traditionally, education services was either a separate unit or was part of professional services, because you had a revenue target like other departments did. I do remember my first job my first role at the customer success as a in the SuccessHacker company, running customer success, was to create platinum offering, which had to do with value-add services that the customer success would provide. And part of our value proposition was actually creating onboarding packages for different roles. If you're a recruiter, if you're an HR, if you're a payroll person, what about the training that you need to get? And I went to my education services peer, and he said, that's something that we do it for money. We have classroom offerings, and we have online offerings, but I cannot give it up for you to package it. So I said, okay, you have a trainer. I can contract with your trainer to produce content for my package. Probably he didn't think that the package actually would take off the platinum version. He said, okay, this is great. It's an order. I'm going to charge you whatever it was, $10,000 a week. So he actually prepared, short training for each of those roles, and he signed the papers. We were large kind of, at that time we were SAP, so we had to agree. And then he put that part of the package. And then he started seeing that actually more and more customers are becoming self-sufficient, and they're getting onboarded themselves at their own pace, as opposed to being forced to sign contracts or swipe their credit cards. So I'd say that to answer your question, probably in the past was within or alongside with other services, but now I'm seeing education more and more becoming part of the customer success as part of an customer onboarding.
And I would, please.
No, go ahead.
I would generally echo the same comments. I mean, what I think we need to do is to really collapse all the different silos that have been there in the past around servicing a customer, because ultimately we're all doing the same thing, whether it's support or implementation or a CSM. Ultimately, our focus is to service the customer, meet their immediate need, and do so with the product as well as possible, so they renew and they expand the product. And I think education is just along those same lines. Ultimately, we want to monetize things in recurring revenue, and education is, I think, the easiest way to do that. It's the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, really.
I've owned education, I think, in every role of the last 15, 17 years. I've held that education component of it's typically the services team is the closest to the product and the closest to the customer. They know what needs to be taught. They know how to teach it, because they're enabling the customer on a daily basis. They're the ones that you want to teach the pre-sales team and the sales team, to make sure that what they're selling aligns with what is possible. But I think that if size of the company, maturity level of the company, you get large enough, it probably makes more sense to do, to spin it off and have it be its own organization, because they're serving a lot of people, both internally and externally. And it's probably more than, it becomes more of a corporate enablement function, and probably more than what your leader of CS wants to own at that size. I'm talking about a public company with thousands of people in it that all need to know and understand the product.
You're talking about internal training?
Both internal and external. I mean, the training, the education teams that I've built and run started to serve the services team, but ended up training sales and everybody else that really needed to understand the product.
Yeah, Tom.
So I have a question. I've done a little professional services, and I'm really biased against it because it's really hard. I mean, it's really hard. So I'm always like,
Bias against hard stuff, Tom?
it's well, for a lot of reasons. So so I've just done a little, and it's just always
It is.
been,
Yeah.
it's always been insanely hard. But you did it before because you had to do it, right? So when I look at things today, my focus on SaaS is customer lifetime value. There's all these moving parts, but I just look at it, hey, people invest in giving me money because I'm creating this giant thing that's somewhere out there worth a bucket load of profit, and CLTV is just profit, right? So if I do professional services up front for onboarding, and I charge for it, every time I'm just going to cut it out as a line item. I mean, it's got to be a line item, or it doesn't matter, right? Then it's just customer success. So if I'm charging for it and it's a line item, it's cool. It protects my price, because if my software costs $1 and I say it's $1 plus $1.15 for the professional services, because it's not recurring revenue, every time I'm just gonna, like, when the customer's like, it's too much, and they go, okay, well, we'll cut out the services, right?
Well, then you make the product $2.
Yeah, but.
And you keep getting that $2 every.
What if you really need those onboarding services?
Then you
Right,
make,
like-
then you make the price of the product higher.
Right, you make the price of the product higher and
I get it, but that's giving it away, right? If it, then it's just
Which-
customer success. If I don't have a separate line item for services, like, why does it matter?
It is
Right.
interesting, the business model of including cost of goods sold. Is it just included in there and it's not a line item, or is it line item out?
Yeah.
Which I think is a fair question.
And then even one more thing, if you do it, like exactly what she's saying, you go back to customer lifetime value, the margins aren't there on services. Customer lifetime value is profit, so like if you build this in the whole way, like the CLTV goes down, that means you can spend, you can't spend like, Salesforce spent $2.18 for $1 worth of revenue in 2009. You can't do that if you don't have CLTV, and when you bake in services, it's margin right there. So like, I don't get it. So, but tell me where I'm wrong, because I don't know that much about services.
Don't your customers find that a barrier to entry to see that line item up front?
That's the
Yeah, so my point is, if it's really needed, they're just like, oh, I don't want to do it. Well, then you're hosed, right? If it's really needed, if it
I don't
really adds
think,
value.
I don't
why you
think
think
it gets
you-
added as a line item anymore, I think that's a
No.
legacy.
We do
But
it
then-
separately as a line
Do you
item.
still do
Yeah.
it separately?
And it's necessary. I mean, our customers like maybe 2% of our customers right now could do what they need to do themselves. The majority of them can't. But, I mean, it's just part of setting the value of what they're gonna get, and it's just,
Do you think commissioning sales on it would help sell it? So here's the thing, I mean, like if you commission sales, and they get commission on it,
Yeah,
I'm gonna sell it.
Mhm.
It's more that I get to sell.
that's what we do.
I think it depends. I think it depends whether it's a homogeneous type of product versus a platform. Okay, if it's a platform play, you're gonna have a services line item, and customers are gonna expect it. When it's a homogeneous platform, as a services executive, as a customer success executive, part of your job is figuring out how can I do my onboarding, my services as efficiently as possible, constantly be getting as much as possible out of my team, right? So I can goose the price of my ARR, right, to cover that services cost. Now my job, the game for me, is to figure out how can I get Joe to deliver that 80 hours of onboarding in 60 hours, in 50 hours, in 40 hours. My objective is to get my team running so well, and to develop service offerings and all the things that I can do to reduce that time while maintaining that original price hike that I embedded into the ARR to cover my services. That's how I've always approached
I totally
it.
buy into that, but that, to me, that's just not professional services, right? It's just increasing your cost to cover your cost of goods sold, which is you need a bunch of people to implement stuff.
Well, the team is professional services, Don. It's the services team, Don.
It used to be called professional services.
Yeah.
The good news is we're on the question time, just letting everybody know, from a question perspective, we're on questions, so everybody's
Well,
just open.
I'm seeing more companies charge like an implementation fee,
Yeah.
so there's the subscription and then there's the one-time implementation fee, which is not, it's required, it's not negotiable, so I'm seeing that more and more, to cover that, it's required, because our job is to make you successful in the product, not just to throw a product at you.
I've seen that too.
That's our model.
I was just.
And is it working?
I was gonna say, I think it all depends upon the offering and if the implementation is straightforward or complex. Does it require a lot of data work, or is it something that you just basically, install and go?
Like configuring some things and
Yeah.
setting some things up, and yeah, can I do that even quicker and more efficiently and compact that, and that's all bonus for us.
Because we've done work with companies with both that were very almost like a non-services model
Yeah.
versus even a point solution, but there's a fair amount of data work that had to go to make sure that they could get the right sources. So
And
the customers
that's
seemed to implicitly understand what was hard what was more complicated versus what was less.
well, it's the integration piece, and I'm sure you can relate to this. The integration piece, the data piece, is such a wild card. I mean, you could walk in, you could sell them something and they'll tell you, oh, our data is perfect, our data is fantastic. It is the cleanest, the greatest data that you've ever seen. And when you peel back the onion, it is just, it's a goat rodeo, right? You don't know that, you know, and it's that more often than not, right? So you got to protect yourself. You got to cover yourself for that.
Go ahead.
I think this is a fascinating question, but I think you may want to think about splitting it into two. If there is work to deploy, that's professional services. And you want as minimal of that as possible, because we all agree, raise your hand if you know, that ARR is more profitable for us than one time, right? But the way whether you put a line item or not, is a go-to-market question that has actually little to do with who does the work. If there is not a lot of work, bundle it in. Or if you want to convince your customer there's not a lot of work, oh, Mr. Customer, this is so easy, I'm not really going to charge you. Bundle it in, great. If there is a lot, your auditors are going to tell you that you need to break it out. Your finance people will tell you that you charge differently. The ARR you charge up front, the services will be got. And if you want to protect yourself, hey, this is the scope of work, Mr. Customer, if you want more, I'll do it, but I need to get paid more. If you don't have a line item, it's harder. Like, here's the SOW, but the price is bundled, doesn't really work. So it's your separate question.
So one of the things we did at Burst, and it was something that I actually first started it when we were at Savion, was we created these service offerings. We saw Burst, by the way, BI tool, Cloud BI tool, was acquired by Infor last year. We saw regularly, I would say probably 40-45% of the time people come to us and they were looking for Salesforce pipeline reporting. We saw that time and time again. So created this solution factory, which is something that I had done at Savion, where we were able to create a standard set of reports and dashboards and ETL snippets that we bundled up and sold as a license, as a licensed product with a set of hours to allow us to actually implement it and integrate it. Very thick box around exactly what we're going to deliver, but it allowed us to reduce that services time and sell a package and add on to the license revenue piece of the business.
So reuse, packaging of best practices, using knowledge management internally, sharing with partners, even inviting customers to weigh in. That actually creates, reduces your cost and addresses the complexity. Another thing that I learned now I work in the product group is that I look at my career back when, for example, I was running services and my boss came in and said, we need data sheets. So what? We're coming up with these 3 things, and you write on the board and go and write the data sheet. So in services, a lot of times we don't do enough market research, understand what the pool it is. We just go and say these are the things that we do, and sometimes even we don't have it, that's okay. If the data sheet actually sells, then I'm going to build the collaterals to deliver it. And I said, what's the risk? It's going to be $50,000 offering. I thought that was going to be a lot, or 100,000, whatever. And then even the customer buys. So a lot of customers don't want to buy time and material; they want to buy it for you. And then the sales guys, obviously, he's on the customer side. So all of a sudden, my time and material, 50K that I sold, that I didn't have a lot of background in it. Now it's turning into a 250K monster that I have to deliver. Okay, that's for the first time. Now, if I make it repeatable, I can maybe recover in the back end. But that's just like doing everything in reverse. But if you look at, for example, some of the practices that are not common, I'm not saying it's always started from the product, but also in the services, is that you actually start with the customer journey and think about customer journey from the outside in terms of what they need at different stages, and then what your offering should look like, and then who's actually, instead of looking at your competing silos in services delivery, who's best suited to actually deliver that service, what it should look like, how can you actually prototype it with some customers, get some early adopters, build the collaterals, and that way you can actually smooth journey across a larger customer base as opposed to sort of cowboy mentality, create something out there and then bounce back at you. So that was those are kind of couple of things. And I think, and even the customer journey, when you bring in your customers to talk about your service offerings, you can ask them how much value is it to them. Then you can actually do value-based pricing as opposed to cost plus. You know, it takes me so many hours of these resources, I need 40% margin, 60% margin, so that's going to be a good price. But then you work it back the other way around in terms of the value that the customer.
I can give a really practical example of that. Our customers, it's a reporting limitation, but we work with typically small customers, but if you need to get data out, one of our customers told us, like, this takes me like 20 or 30 hours to do. It takes us, let's just say it takes us 3 hours to do it. So they're like, I'm gonna pay you for the time that I don't wanna spend on this. Okay, great, we'll take that, and we can run it, and it's easier for us to do. So that's just a really practical example. And so it's funny because as this conversation has evolved, we have started with like professional services, and maybe it's folding more into customer success, and maybe there is no professional services, and then we've kind of come full circle to actually there is a place for professional services. But I think the whole point here is it's just an evolution, kind of like anything else. And really, professional services, sitting with sales or sitting with CS is not really the question, but maybe it's the how do we continuously deliver value for customers and make sure that that value is aligned with the organization that we built and making sure that that organization makes sense. So whether or not you have professional services managers or education people or those things, it's about making sure you understand your customers, the value that's important to them along their life cycle, and making sure you can actually deliver it. And whether you use channel partners, whether you have internal, that's something that really requires looking at what do you have today, what do you need, and what do your customers need. And I think that's one way you can start, taking a look at that. Because there's going to be a variety of ways, I think, that people are going to be able to organize that. But I would like to thank all of our panelists. Thank you. I think I wanted to leave a little bit of time at the end. I know people were asking questions, but there's certainly time for networking up until 7:30. So thank you all for coming. I think this was super fun. It was my first time hosting, so I had a great time.
You did a great job.
This was great. It was super fun. So please enjoy. Make sure you ask our panelists any other follow-up questions if you have them. And thanks for coming. Come to our other events. We have them all the time. Irene hosts a bunch. We have other people, so definitely come to more. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you for coming.